The elite charity auction, which took place in the luxurious hall of one of the most famous hotels in the city, brought together the most influential people. The event was thought out to the smallest detail, from luxurious decorations to a perfectly prepared program. The organizers tried to create an atmosphere that would emphasize the importance of the event, but at the same time exude the unattainable luxury that is typical of such events. The goal was noble, to raise funds to support orphanages, but for many guests it was also an opportunity to show off their wealth and influence. The huge hall was shining with thousands of lights, reflected in crystal chandeliers that came down from the high ceiling. Tables covered with snow-white tablecloths were decorated with bouquets of fresh flowers. The napkins were folded into complex shapes, and the cutlery shone like mirrors. An atmosphere of perfect harmony reigned around, where every detail was thought out to the smallest nuance. However, this outward splendor hid the true face of many of those present, the desire to demonstrate their own superiority. Among the guests were businessmen, actors, politicians, designers, and other elite representatives. Their communication was accompanied by light laughs, sarcastic remarks, and mutual compliments, which often hid the usual competition. Here, everyone tried to outdo the other, some with expensive clothes, some with stories about their latest achievements, and some with promises to make the largest contribution to the foundation. For many, charity was just a pretext to show off their best side. In the midst of this maelstrom of wealth and ambition, there was a man who clearly stood out from the crowd. It was Keanu Reeves. His appearance caused some surprise among the guests. Some recognized him immediately, others realized who he was only later, but his presence caused a mixed reaction. He didn't look like a typical elite representative. His clothes were simple but neat. He didn't try to draw attention to himself, and even seemed a little awkward in this environment. Keanu quietly took a seat in the far corner of the room. He was in no hurry to participate in conversations and watch the events from the sidelines. His modesty contrasted with the loudness and activity of the other guests. He didn't try to impress with his presence, but that's what drew people's eyes to him. People were not used to seeing someone who did not want to be the center of attention. There was a woman among the guests who personified the pathos of the event with her behavior and appearance. She was wearing a dress from a famous designer, adorned with jewelry that probably cost more than the annual budget of a small town. Her movements were precise and demonstrative, and her gaze radiated confidence and arrogance. She was used to being the center of attention, and as soon as she spotted Keanu, she immediately decided that this was her chance to shine with her wit. The woman leaned slightly toward her companions, whispered something, and they laughed. Then, pretending to be interested, she approached Keanu. Her posture and manner of speaking betrayed insincerity. She started talking, but her every word was filled with sarcasm. Her behavior was aimed at attracting the attention of the other guests, who gradually began to focus their eyes on this scene. The woman turned to the audience, gesturing and adding sarcastic notes to her words. The guests laughed, and Keanu just looked at her calmly, not reacting to the provocations. His expression was calm, without a hint of irritation or resentment. This silence and restraint seemed even stronger than her mockery. With each passing minute, the audience's attention was focused more and more on them. Someone was watching the scene with rapt attention. Someone was discussing it with each other, but everyone felt that this was just the beginning of something unusual. Keanu, despite all the woman's attempts to make him look bad, remained unfazed. This aroused even more interest and perhaps even respect from those who watched him in silence. Meanwhile, the auction was about to begin. The host asked the guests to take their seats and announced the start of the auction. But even after that, the scene between Keanu and the woman remained in the spotlight. The guests realized that this evening would be different from all the previous ones. Although they didn't know what was going to happen, a sense of tension and anticipation was in the air. The auction began with a solemn speech by the host, who tried to set the tone for the event. His voice was clear and confident, telling about the purpose of the event and the importance of the funds raised. All the guests took their seats, but the shadow of the recent incident was still felt in the room. People exchanged glances and whispered, but most could not take their eyes off Keanu Reeves, who sat quietly in his corner, as if not noticing everyone's attention. The first lots were quite standard: jewelry, antique furniture, paintings by contemporary artists. The bidding was lively, the bids were rising rapidly, and the winners were proud to receive their prizes. The woman who had previously tried to humiliate Keanu also participated in the auction, raising bids on several items. Her voice sounded clear, confident, and a bit defiant. She was clearly trying to draw attention to herself, as if she wanted to prove that she was not just rich, but also influential. However, every time the woman won a lot, her gaze would involuntarily slide toward Keanu. She wanted to see his reaction, but his face remained unmoved. This was starting to irritate her. Her appearance became more tense and her voice sharper. The guests noticed, but no one said anything. Everyone was waiting to see how it would end. When the most expensive lot was brought on stage, a rare painting by a famous artist, estimated at several $1 million, the tension in the room reached its peak. The host enthusiastically told its story, emphasizing its uniqueness and importance for art. People were holding their breath, waiting for the first bids. The woman seized the moment and raised her hand first. Her bid was high, much higher than the starting price. She glanced toward Keanu as if to challenge him to a duel. Her self-confidence was obvious. She was sure that no one could compete with her. But suddenly Keanu, who hadn't placed a single bet up to that point, raised his hand. His voice sounded calm and confident as he called out an amount that exceeded the woman's bid. The room fell silent. The guests looked at him in surprise, and the host, a little confused, repeated the bet. The woman did not expect such a turn. Her confidence was shaken, but she was not going to give up. She raised the bet even higher, trying to save face in front of the audience. But Keanu raised his hand again, and his bet outbid her again. It turned into a real confrontation. The guests watched with interest, discussing among themselves who would win. The stakes were rising, and every time the woman tried to raise the price, Keanu calmly answered. His demeanor was unruffled, as if he were playing chess, thinking through every move. At the same time, the woman began to lose control. Her voice was getting sharper and sharper, and her face was flushing with tension. She was sure that Keanu would not be able to continue, but his every move proved otherwise. In the end, the amount exceeded all expectations. The guests held their breaths as the woman finally gave up, lowering her hand. Her defeat was obvious, and she looked humiliated. The host announced Keanu as the winner, and the room burst into applause. It was not just the end of the auction, but a real triumph. When the host asked Keanu to come up on stage to say a few words, he calmly rose. His words were simple but profound. He said that he had bought the painting not for himself, but for children, who would be reminded that beauty exists even in the darkest of times. His speech evoked emotions among many guests. Some felt ashamed of their behavior. Others admired his modesty and generosity. Afterwards, Keanu left the hall without expecting any additional attention. But his act remained in the memory of everyone who was present. The guests discussed this event for a long time, recognizing that they had witnessed something extraordinary. The woman who tried to ridicule him was humiliated, but perhaps this evening was a lesson for her. The auction ended, but its result was much more important than just the money raised. It was an evening that showed that true greatness is not about money or status, but about how a person behaves and what values they bring to the world. When the auction was over and the guests began to leave, discussions about what had happened did not subside. The story of the confrontation between a humble actor and a self-confident rich woman became the main topic of the evening. Some guests approached the woman, trying to encourage her, but most avoided her gaze, realizing that she had caused her own humiliation. Although she tried to maintain a semblance of confidence, she felt the ground slipping away from under her feet. Her humiliation was public, and she knew it. Every whisper, every slanted look seemed to her to be proof that everyone was laughing at her. But she could not change what had already happened. At this time, Keanu was leaving the hall and heading for the exit, avoiding unnecessary attention. He walked calmly, with his head down, but his inner peace contrasted with the confusion in the room. Some guests tried to catch up with him to thank him for his noble deed, but most just watched him leave in silence. He did not need applause or praise. He did what he thought was right, and that was enough. However, one detail of the evening was overlooked by most of the guests. It was not the painting itself that he purchased, nor even the amount he donated. It was the real reason why he came to this auction. The people watching him saw only the outward appearance, his modesty, his calmness, his desire to help. But few knew that this evening had a deeply personal meaning for him. Somewhere far from the luxurious halls and expensive suits, there was a place that left an indelible mark on Keanu's life. It was a small orphanage where he spent several years of his childhood after his life was turned upside down. This place was a refuge, a challenge, and the beginning of a journey that has led him to where he is today. It was in this orphanage that he first saw the painting that reminded him so much of the current auction item. It was a copy, a cheap reproduction hanging in the hallway, but it became a symbol of hope for him. In his most difficult moments, he looked at it and dreamed that someday he would be able to change his life. He dreamed of a world where there would be no pain and suffering, where every child would be happy. When he found out that the original of this painting was being auctioned, he could not stay away. It was not just a painting for him, it was a symbol of struggle, hope and faith that even the darkest times can end. He knew he would do everything possible to make it his, and not to decorate his home or office, but to return it to a place where it would become a source of inspiration for other children. After the auction, Keanu went to the orphanage. He did not want to attract media attention or make a show of it. His goal was simple: to give the painting to those who need it most. The driver brought him to a small, slightly abandoned house that stood apart from the bustle of the city. Despite the years that had passed, the place remained the same as he remembered it. The old trees, the narrow path, the small windows with white frames, all of this brought back a wave of memories. When he entered, the children who were there greeted him with surprise and joy. It was an unusual day for them. Some of them recognized him, others were just happy to have a guest. He brought with him not only the painting, but also gifts for each child. Toys, books, clothes. All these were carefully selected to give them at least a little happiness. The painting took its place on the wall in the main hall of the orphanage. The children looked at it with interest, listening to the story of how it was created and why it was so important. For them, it was not just art, it was a gift they would treasure for the rest of their lives. Keanu spent several hours with them, playing, telling stories, listening to their dreams and wishes. For him, it was not just a visit, it was an opportunity to give back a piece of what he had once received. When it was time to say goodbye, the children surrounded him, thanking him for everything he had done. Their faces, full of joy and gratitude, remained in his heart. He left the orphanage with a peaceful heart. This day was a reminder to him of how important it is to help those in need. He knew that what he did may seem insignificant on a global scale, but for these children it was of great importance. And that was the most important thing for him. After Keanu Reeves left the orphanage, he couldn't stop thinking about how much more could be done for these children. His visit brought back a wave of emotions and memories that reawakened his old dreams and desire to help others. He knew that what he had done was important, but he also realized that it was not enough. New ideas began to form in his mind that could do more good for those in need. Immediately after returning home, he sat down at his desk and began to write down his thoughts. He realized that simply donating money or things was only a temporary solution. To change children's lives for the better, we need to create a support system that will help them develop, learn, and become confident. Thus, the idea of creating a charitable foundation that would focus on long-term change was born. The foundation was named to reflect its purpose, the future for everyone. The main idea was to provide children not only with material assistance, but also with access to quality education, psychological support, and opportunities for self-realization. Keanu involved his friends, colleagues, and like-minded people in this project. He knew that together they could do much more. One of the foundation's first initiatives was a mentoring program. It was designed to ensure that every child in orphanages had an adult mentor who would help them navigate life, support them in difficult situations, and share their own experiences. This idea was close to Keanu himself, because as a child he often dreamed of having someone around who could guide him and help him believe in himself. In addition, the foundation organized a series of educational programs. They included courses in art, music, technology, and even entrepreneurship. Keanu believed that every child has unique talents, and it is the job of adults to help them discover those talents. The curricula were designed to not only impart knowledge, but also inspire children to dream and strive to achieve more. Special attention was paid to psychological support. Keanu realized how important it is for children who have gone through difficulties to be able to talk to a professional psychologist, get support, and learn how to cope with emotional challenges. The foundation created a network of support centers where children could get help and work on their inner world. Over the following months and years, Future for Everyone began to expand. The foundation launched new programs, partnered with other organizations, and attracted more and more resources. Keanu was actively involved in every stage of the foundation's work. He personally visited orphanages, talked to children, mentors, and volunteers. His presence and sincerity inspired others to join the initiative. One of the most touching moments in the foundation's work occurred during the opening of a new support center for children. The ceremony was attended by dozens of children, their caregivers, and local residents. One of the boys, who had previously received help from the foundation, took to the microphone to thank Keanu. His speech was short, but it touched the hearts of everyone there. He said that thanks to the foundation, he was able to believe in himself and now dreams of becoming a doctor to help others. Keanu, listening to these words, could not hold back his tears. For him, it was the best proof that all his efforts were not in vain. This boy became a symbol of how one good decision can change the lives of many people. And Keanu realized that this was just the beginning. However, the foundation's success brought with it new challenges. Some skeptics began to question the sincerity of his motives, claiming that it was just a way to draw attention to himself. But Keanu did not pay attention to these accusations. He knew that his actions spoke louder than any words. And even those who doubted him could not deny the real results of his work. Over time, Future for Everyone has become one of the most influential charitable organizations in the country. It has helped thousands of children find their way in life, get an education, and become confident. And although Keanu remained in the shadows, avoiding unnecessary attention, his influence was felt in every project of the foundation. His story became an inspiration for many others. People began to think that even one person can change the world if they really want to. Although the path was not easy, Keanu never regretted his choice. He knew that helping others was the best way to make his life meaningful. The success of the Future for Everyone Foundation has brought Keanu Reeves not only satisfaction, but also new challenges. Despite the positive impact that the foundation has had on the lives of thousands of children, Keanu realized that the scale of the problem was much larger than he had initially imagined. His desire to help only grew, and with it came the realization that real change requires systemic action. The first step on this path was the foundation's initiative to reform the child welfare system. Keanu and a team of specialists began working on creating programs that would allow children from orphanages to receive more support during their transition to adulthood. These programs included not only psychological and material assistance, but also practical skills such as financial literacy, job preparation, and coping with life challenges. Bureaucracy was one of the biggest obstacles on this path. Many government agencies were not ready for change, and some officials openly sabotaged the foundation's initiatives. However, Keanu, as always, remained persistent. He personally met with government officials, politicians, and representatives of NGOs, convincing them of the importance of change. His charisma, sincerity, and deep understanding of the problem helped to attract many influential people to his side. An important part of the foundation's work has been spreading awareness among the public. Keanu organized a series of documentaries that told the stories of children from orphanages, their dreams, difficulties, and successes. These films were a real eye-opener for many people who had never thought about what goes on behind the walls of such institutions. Viewers were struck by the honesty and emotional power of these stories, and this prompted many to take action. One of the foundation's largest projects was an initiative to create a network of educational centers for children from disadvantaged families. These centers offered free access to education, talent development, and psychological support. Their peculiarity was that they not only taught children, but also helped them build self-confidence, discover their strengths, and prepare for the future. These centers were staffed by teachers, psychologists, and mentors, anyone who was willing to dedicate themselves to the Foundation's mission. Keanu often visited these centers personally. His visits were always an event for the children and staff. He spent time with the children, listened to their stories, and shared his experience. His attention to each child, sincerity, and desire to help made him a real role model for them. For many children, meeting him was the impetus that made them believe in themselves and their strength. Once, during a visit to one of the centers, a girl named Elizabeth approached Keanu. She was holding a notebook with her paintings in it. She timidly handed him the notebook and told him that she dreamed of becoming an artist. Keanu looked at her work carefully and said that she had a real talent. He promised to help her develop in this direction. Subsequently, with the support of the Foundation, Elizabeth received a scholarship to study at a prestigious art school. A few years later, her works were exhibited in galleries, and she became a famous artist herself. This story has become a symbol of how a little support can change lives. Despite all his success, Keanu never stopped working. He was constantly looking for new ways to do more. He realized that real change takes time, effort, and the collaboration of many people. His team continued to grow, with people from different fields: education, medicine, technology. They all worked together to make the world a better place for children in need. In addition, Keanu began to work actively on international projects. The Foundation expanded its activities outside the country, helping children in different parts of the world. He believed that every child, regardless of their place of birth, deserves a chance for a better future. This idea became the foundation of his mission. Over the years, A Future for Everyone has grown into a global movement. His work has inspired thousands of people to join charity, help others, and create their own initiatives. And although Keanu always stayed in the shadows, avoiding unnecessary attention, his influence was enormous. People around the world learned about his actions and were inspired by his example. Eventually, Keanu realized that his mission was not just about helping children. It was also about inspiring others to change the world around them. His story is a reminder that each of us has the power to change someone's life for the better. And although the path was difficult, he knew that all his efforts were worth it. That was the end of one chapter in Keanu Reeves' life, but his work continued. The world was changing thanks to his efforts, and he believed that the best was yet to come. His example remained a light for those who wanted to make this world a better place for everyone.